Hi everyone, I'm Meeta.
Morning.
Hi Tosh. Welcome everyone. So we are.
Hi Meeta, how you doing? Right?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Welcome to all the attendees as well. So we're here for the second session of our Q&A questions and answers for Business Hysteria. How everyone out there is coping through all of the noise, all of the panic that's going on, but most importantly, trying to help guide everyone through it. So as you all know who attended last week, I am Meeta Sahni. I'm the CEO of the main group. We help businesses usually help them by helping them attract through recruitment and then retain and develop their people. But right now, we are here to help you with your questions around how to get through this time. Tosh, please introduce yourself.
My name is Tosh Polpitiye. For those that know, I'm an employment law solicitor. I run a law firm called Astute HR Limited. And Meeta and I thought it would be helpful to, we're getting so many inquiries. There's so much information out there. We just want to kind of filter it down to stuff that matters to employers, companies, so that they can sort of figure out what to do, what the next steps are. Everybody's dealing with a crisis within a crisis at the moment. So this is a free webinar. There is no catch. We're doing this as a part series effectively, and we'll carry on depending on what, how that benefits you really. This is our second of 4 at the moment. Last week we did a discussion about furloughing employees, home working, and using modern technology. Meeta's going to take you through what we're going to talk to you about today.
Yes, thank you, Tosh. So today the topics have been chosen by you all. The first topic is the next steps of furloughing. So I don't know about everyone out there, but I know that what I've been doing, I have our own business, and what we've been focusing on is around how we're not only furloughing, but then supporting the people on the ground who are still here. So the second topic is how to motivate and retain your workforce to help them stay mentally well and productive. So we're going to be covering that as well. And then we did a poll for the third topic. We really wanted to hear from you what it is you're looking for at this time. And tell us what everyone chose.
So the number one topic was really what to do in the circumstances when we have to make people redundant. There's lots of redundancy, layoffs, furloughs. I can see there's already questions coming up on our chat, which is on the right, by the way. And so we're going to be talking about when you have to be looking at redundancies. What's the situation that you'll be looking at redundancies will be the third topic today.
Yeah. So our format is going to be around 30 minutes. We've promised to keep this succinct. We know how everyone it almost seems busier than when we were doing our usual daily work. So don't know how that can be when we've actually saved time and travel. But I think changing direction of an organization always takes more energy, headspace and time. But we're going to spend about 10 minutes on each topic. If there are more questions, we are going to try and answer them. So it may go up to 40 minutes if the demand is there. And then Tosh and I last week, for those of you who were here, saw that we did a follow-up Q&A session. So please, what's really helpful here is for you guys to ask the questions so we can make sure that we tailor this session and the coming sessions to what your challenges and needs are out there right now. Okay, so shall we start with the first topic?
Any questions as we're going through? We will be. Sorry, Meeta, I think there's a slight delay in the webinar feed, but don't worry. What I was going to say to people: ask questions as you go through. As we switch between the topics, we'll be looking at any questions as well anyway, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. And as Meeta just said, we'll be doing a follow-up video answering all of the questions, which is what we did last time, which a lot of people found really helpful. But look, just use this as an open forum to just ask whatever questions you are, and anything we can do to help, we will. So should we get stuck in, Meeta?
Yes, so tell us about next steps. So for me this week, Tosh, talking about real life experience, I'm sure I'm reflecting everyone out there as well. I've spent time working with my finance people, working with HR, looking at it strategically. Who are we going to furlough? And then really talking to those people and having really difficult conversations. We want everyone at this time to feel safe. Health and well-being is first and foremost, but we're having to have some tough conversations. So I imagine companies, some will have already decided who to furlough. Some are still trying to work out, once we've, who we're furloughing, what next. Shine a light to us, Tosh, on, once we've established who we're going to furlough, what the next steps would be there.
Yeah, so let me break it down. So the coronavirus retention scheme is there to cover 80% of employees who would otherwise a salary up to a cap of £2,500, and it's designed as an alternative to employees being laid off because of the coronavirus situation. Okay, laid off or redundancy, whichever way you want to look at it. So that's the criteria. They're backdating it to the 1st of March 2020, and the scheme is going to be in place for a period of at least 3 months at the moment, subject to an extension by the Chancellor. It backdates to only people that have been on the payroll from the 28th of February onwards. So I just wanted to get those key bits first in terms of what the criteria is. So if they've been on the payroll after that deadline, that date, they're not entitled to it. If they're not on the payroll, they're not entitled to be furloughed. Okay. Furloughed means they are at home and they are not able to do any work. They're not able to do any work because
there isn't any work for them to do.
Or perhaps there's work to do, but the employer can't pay them.
Okay. That's good to know.
So in both those circumstances, they're furloughed. So the first thing that an employer has to do, the very first step, is designate them as being a furloughed employee. The way you do that is talk to them, tell them, explain the circumstances, and then put it in a written agreement. We've been giving a free furlough agreement courtesy of Daniel Barnett, one of the leading employment law barristers in the UK, and we've been putting that out to everybody there to help them really. So that is something that can be presented to the HMRC later on to show when they've been furloughed from. That's number one.
Can I just talk a bit about life experience in that space, Tosh? Because obviously I've been leaning to you to help us at the main world have those conversations with our people. So some of the reality behind that for us is that when we're having the conversations, this date, for example, in March, we've had people who were on holiday. They weren't working when they came back. Their work wasn't there. We were talking about trying to furlough them from the 1st of March, but actually I had some questions back around, well, I didn't come back from holiday till the 20th. How does that work? How can we deal with something like that?
The key issue is, what is the primary reason that they're not at work? If the primary reason is because they're on holiday, Meeta, then it's full pay holiday pay. Yeah. If the primary reason is that they're going to potentially be made redundant or there's no work because of the coronavirus, then they are entitled to be furloughed. And that's why we're having an express agreement with them. If they're off because of sickness absence, if that's the reason, well, then it's sick pay that they get. Under the normal sick pay rules, at the moment, they can't go to the GP necessarily, but they can get a fit note or a sick note from the NHS 111 online service, right? And if it's maternity leave, then they're off on the usual maternity rights that they have. So what's the main reason they're off is what determines whether you put them on furlough or not. Okay. The second thing is, just to put this out there, is an employer's obligation is to pay an employee if they are ready, willing, and able to work. So the furlough agreement should expressly say that we are paying you 80% with a view to claiming back 80% through the scheme. If it doesn't, strictly speaking, they're entitled to their full pay, and the company will just be reimbursed 80% or $2.5 grand, whichever the cap reaches first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does to me. We're definitely getting a lot of questions. So is there anything else you can tell us before I start looking at some of the questions that are coming out there?
So I suppose the issue is about how you process the next steps it's the online portal. That's what everybody's waiting for. Yeah. So first steps are tell your employees they're furloughed, get a written agreement confirming they're furloughed. Part of that written agreement should be a change to their employment terms, which means that they're going to be paid only 80% of their salary. It's really important. The one that we're giving out, Meeta, actually covers that. Yeah, that's really good. We've actually used Tosh's free furlough letter that he's provided, and that will be provided to everyone attending today. So that takes all the questions out of what exact language has to be used in that confirmation letter. Correct. And what we're doing is we're getting all these things in place, Meeta, so that when the online portal comes up, which is anticipated to be before the end of this month, then we have all the relevant information to put through, payroll information and so forth. Well, I've been talking to Thank you. I mean, I've been talking to a lot of our clients. Usually we talk to them about the good times, when they're looking to grow, when they're looking to increase workforce, projects that they're winning. Right now, it's such a different conversation. But it really is useful to understand that everyone is going through this. We are not alone in this. But actually, and even though we're furloughing, we still want to look after our furloughed people. So one of the questions here is around other benefits. So, for example, Isabel has asked, employees who are furloughed, would they still be entitled to company cars, mobile phones, other benefits? Those are not covered under the furlough scheme. So they are under their employment contract.
Yeah.
So if you put them furloughed, then no, the only thing that the 80% reimbursement will cover is salary costs, which includes national insurance contributions and the auto enrollment pension contributions, which is up to 3%. That's
so
it.
All other benefits would stop. So if an employee has a company car at home and that benefit stops, how would an employer manage that?
So if they're going to put them on furlough, then that has to be confirmed in the agreements what it is that they're not getting. So we're confirming they're only getting 80%. They're not getting a company car. I mean, I'm not sure people need their cars at the moment going here and there, but nevertheless, it's a different matter. So it depends. You know, what I want people to understand is the employment rights in the contract don't change, whatever's happened, unless we agree that it changes. So the furlough agreement gives you an opportunity to change the terms of how we're now operating and what we're paying. The alternative is everybody loses their jobs and nobody has any money. So there really isn't an alternative unless people just want to be made redundant, I suppose, which we'll talk about later on.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we're only 2 weeks in and already we're getting the feeling that this is going to be a minimum of 3 months, maybe longer. So it really is key. Businesses are starting to make good choices around cash management. And again, we'll talk a bit about that going forward, but really starting to make those decisions so that they can see their organization through the coming months.
Well, one other thing I wanted to say, Meeta, is for the companies that don't have any money. I mean, it's all well and good. You know, most of the wording for the scheme, coronavirus job retention scheme, is for a reimbursement. But actually, if you can show that you don't have any money, and the next thing is, I suppose, is to look at the funding that is available. I think you're able to talk about some of those things, right? In terms of the coronavirus business interruption loan schemes, those sorts of things.
Yes, again, so I can put my experiential information and week out to everyone there. I mean, you know, we as an organization, like all of yourselves out there, will have been looking at what support you have. And we all know, first of all, the furlough scheme is the coronavirus job retention scheme. We've talked a lot about that. There's also the self-employment income support package that is now available, and the statutory sick pay relief package as well, which is available for all SME organizations. From a commercial perspective, there's small business grant funding, which is £10,000 for all business who are getting the small business rate relief. And there's also business rate holidays available to specific sectors. So anyone out there who is in the retail, hospitality, leisure and nursery businesses can also benefit from some of those support mechanisms that have been made available. Only today we've heard from Rishi Sunak that he's offering, you know, so we already know about the coronavirus business interruption loan scheme. They are now offering one for not only SMEs, but for larger organizations with turnover above, I think it's above 50 million.
Up to 45 million, yes.
45 million up. So, you know, there really are going to be a lot of ways that organizations can plan through this. And I think we're going to be seeing things changing daily. And again, that's why, Tosh, we talked about doing a series of these events so that as we're learning, we can share that out with the audience there. And
I just wanted to clarify, so that the loan means a loan. So in the same way that the banks would normally give a business loan, they want to see that you're on the same projection to whatever loan the criteria they have for the loan in the first place. So it isn't just free money, and it's money you're going to end up paying back. So it just needs to be, you know, properly managed in terms of what can or can't be done. If you're not eligible for the loan and you can't afford to pay your staff, and you can show that, then you've got no choice really if you go and try and keep the staff on board and apply for the application through the online portal and see if you can still get those 80% of those wage costs covered anyway.
Furloughing.
There's no other choice. Closing down, in which case nobody gets anything. Correct.
Yeah, no, furloughing is a very helpful and positive step by the government, and wherever we can, if it can protect everyone's livelihoods and the business long term and the organisation long term, it's something that we should all be really considering. So I've got another question.
Know how it works. Everyone just wants to know how it works. We just want to get that portal up and running, so we can actually see what it is, and actually that when that happens at the end of this month, we can really give people a step-by-step guide and just have what they need to do, what they need to provide, and just make it really easy.
Yeah. So there's a question here around from Donna, actually, and it says, would it be more sensible for me to start all the affected staff I'm going to put on furlough at the same time and not stagger this? What would your thoughts be on that, Tosh?
So I get this question quite a little bit, is can I pick and choose who I want to furlough? The answer is yes, to an extent. It depends what the reasons are that you're picking them. So if you're going to discrimination laws still apply. If it's on the grounds of race, sex, religion, age, disability, any of those sorts of things, those will leave you open to discrimination laws. If you're going to be looking at staggering them, I mean, it depends on what your needs are for the business. Presumably, you need a basic operational level of support staff to do the work, and everybody else is being furloughed. In that case, it would make sense to stagger. So I guess I would say, in answer to that question from Donna, is you need to look at what does the business need. Then it makes sense that you stagger those things and you pick and choose who you want to furlough and not. Also, there's no obligation to furlough, although there might be, which I'll talk about a bit later when we go into redundancies, if the employee's got more than 2 years service. So you're not obligated to automatically put everybody on the furlough scheme. The idea is to, from the government, is to help people save jobs. But obviously, you've got to also look at what the needs of the business are moving forward. Without the business, there's nothing. There's no furlough, there's no employees, there's no job. So then there's no scheme cover. And then everybody's on universal credit. Yeah.
Which is not working in itself at the moment out there with 1 million applications in the last few days. Okay, so I've got another question, and if I've passed over your question, we will come back to it. If not in this session, in the follow-up Q&A sessions. This is quite an interesting question because actually one of my team asked me the same question. My team member said, if I'm being furloughed, can I take a job as an online tutor? And this question from Rana says, it's ambiguous if furloughed employees can go and get an additional job to help plug the gap in their income. The government website doesn't say that it's not permitted. What are your thoughts on that, Tosh?
My thoughts are, if you are doing something during your normal contracted hours, then you are not permitted to do that.
Okay.
Because that doesn't make any sense in the other way. If you're going to do it outside of the contracted hours, I don't see that being any problem, a second job in that sense. If you're doing voluntary work, that's not a problem either. I know the wording of the schemes at the moment is that it only covers, you can't do any work for your employer, but that doesn't mean that everybody starts doing work elsewhere and then getting paid twice the benefit. That's definitely not what the purpose of the scheme is. It won't be.
All right, thank you, Todd. We've got a few more questions that are linked around furloughing and redundancy. So what I suggest we do is we're already sort of about 2/3 of the way in. Let's go on to the next topic, and then we'll come back to these at the end and cover redundancy and furloughing in that topic at the end.
So, Meeta, if you don't mind me asking in this particular section, so obviously lots of people are asking me legal questions, and I'm basing a lot of my practical advice on the experience that a lot of my clients are telling me about. But you're actually going through it.
Yeah.
And you brought some really interesting stuff, some queries that the employees sort of brought up that were challenging, and you thought, I didn't really think about it that sort of way. And I think maybe that would be helpful for people going through the same experience as you right now. Maybe just talk them through what's happening, how you have actually practically talked to people and dealt with things.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tosh. Well, and this is why we decided to make the second topic about keeping your workforce motivated, because, as an employer, whether you're the head of an organization, whether you're the head of the people in your business, we now have two hats to wear. We not only have to keep the business going, and that's something I've really felt the responsibility of is, am I doing the right thing? Am I supporting my people in the right way? And how do we support the furloughed people to still feel part of something and not leave? Because, we all know this is going to be over. We all know that things are going to come good, and we're going to make them come good, and that we will be able to go forward in a new normal where we are going to be transacting and having successful organizations. But within that, it's how we treat the people that are there who've been the chosen ones, if you like, to keep this organization going. How do we keep them motivated? And how do we ensure that the mental well-being of all of our people is really at the forefront? Because, we were talking about stress and mental wealth and all of these areas that really are the cogs of an organization. Mental well-being and productivity go hand in hand. There are study after study showing that, these have to be considered alongside each other.
So what are you doing? What are you actually doing about that? How does that translate to, what should we be doing with our employees right now who are being furloughed or are concerned about the future or anything?
Yeah. So
what are you doing?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to look at ways that we can keep our furloughed employees feeling part of the bigger picture. So what we've done at the main group is that and I wanted to let everyone know that one of the really good things about people on furloughed status is that they can still be trained. You can still coach and train them through this time. And what would be really good is where you can incorporate people that are still working with furloughed employees, run a Zoom session, run a team session, and really bring everyone together to be upskilled, be trained on something where everyone feels that they're working on themselves, even though they're furloughed. It also allows each side to have a bit of team camaraderie, you know. We're also running our 5 o'clock drinks on a Friday. I think we're doing 4 o'clock today, actually. And we're inviting our furloughed team as well as our team on the ground in to be part of that together. So I think that's really cool.
Maybe you should do a live webinar on that, Lisa. I'm sure everybody would quite like to have a glass of wine together with all the chaos that's going around.
Yeah, I think perhaps that might have to be a 5 o'clock and not a 1 o'clock one for us, Tosh. Otherwise, we might be starting the party a little early. Actually,
yeah, right.
Interesting.
You know what I found, Lisa, is just about having a grown-up conversation with people. They just want some transparency. Just if you don't know, you don't know. Tell them that you're doing what you can to help. You know, I picked up the phone to one of my employee who is on maternity leave, and just to reassure them that, look, this is what we're doing. This is how we're dealing with things. And they just appreciate it. They just want to be told what is happening, what's happening now, what's happening next, and why.
Yeah, one of the tips that I think are really key is for when you do manage a team, it's important to have video connection 1 to 3 times a day with each of the members of your team. And I think it's important to have a diary structure for the whole organization where you have set diary times for catch-ups, for your drinks, for coaching, whatever it is that you do at the office in normal time. Adapt it and evolve it so that you've got your ongoing structure. People respond to knowing what's coming. And in these times of uncertainty, as much predictability that we can create for our people, the more that will come back with productivity, engagement, and a sense of support and well-being amongst your business and not-for-profit world, the community.
So in terms of, if we could break it down to 3 things that you're doing right now that we should be, what that company should be doing to maintain that, what would you put the 3 top things as?
I'd say first and foremost, the structure, as I've talked about. Secondly, is a feedback loop. Let everyone know that we value their feelings, their experience, and we want them to come back to us to help us understand how to help them do a good job for the organization. And finally, I think for everyone out there who's in a position of responsibility, make sure your senior leadership team are talking and all on the same page. HR, finance, and the strategic members of the organization all need to be on the same page, because these decisions are life-changing for people. This is unprecedented times. And, you know, as we said, we're 2 weeks into what could be a long haul, you know, and making sure that your organizations are fit for purpose, making sure you're lean, making sure you've taken advantage of all the support out there. And as and when things change, the senior team are leading from the front, you know, clear management strategy for everyone to understand in the organization, whether they're still employed or furloughed, I would say is the key to success for organizations to put them at this stage.
Yeah, totally agree with you.
Good, thank you. And if there are any questions on that, please do share them. If we don't answer them in this session, we will take the time afterwards to go through a Q&A. You can see, Tosh, your legal questions are really popular. So
we'll steam through those at the end, Meeta, right? We'll try and go as many as we can during this session anyway.
Awesome, thank you. And I just wanted to also add before we move on that following on from last week, we offered a free personality profile link for everyone attending the webinar. And we're doing that again because how people feel supported and understood in this time is going to directly reflect on how they work for the organization, what they put in, and how much commitment everyone's going to give and get back over this time to ensure a successful organization in this crisis time. So do look out.
And we're also repeating the offer of the free Daniel Barnett furlough agreement, which is the one we've been talking about today and all the way through. It's super helpful. I mean, that's very nice of him, very, very decent of him to give that for free, quite frankly. Really helpful to loads of clients, just to sort of explain what's going on. So that's going to be going out with this as well.
Yeah, it's really been good to see, actually. Before we go on to the final topic, Tosh, I just wanted to say it's really good to see not just what we're doing, because we know that we want to share everything we know out to community, but actually, you know, I recommend everyone pick up the phone to their advisors, whether it's your financial, legal, whether it's people who are specialists in retention and development like ourselves. You know, we may not be doing a lot in the recruitment space, but we are doing a lot around helping people get work from home help. You know, we're putting PAs and EAs out to support directors and heads of who have their kids at home, have a remit of getting this organization stabilized in this difficult time, and also need to make sure that they can provide for their loved ones and for their business. So there are ways, temporary, flexible working options that can give you that support back. If you're feeling overwhelmed, reach out to Tosh and I, and reach out to your network that you already have. I know it's real positive to see how helpful everyone is being, and it doesn't cost a penny.
Look, we're super nice. I'm saying that. We are really nice. We really like to help. And that doesn't mean just what we know. Either maybe we know people that can help you. We've got a good network with accountants also looking to help, IT people looking to help to sort out homework, whatever contact in any other way. It doesn't mean just legal and recruitment. You know, reach out to us, and if we can do something, we'll do something.
Yeah.
Sure. I see time is ticking along. Should we go into the last?
It always
and then do it. Please, we get to the Q&A.
Yeah. So, Tosh, tell us about the third topic around redundancy. Give us why do you think that's been the popular one?
I think most people recognize the situation as a redundancy situation. Redundancy means there's no longer any work available, right? Actually, redundancy happens in one of three types of situations. Either number one, the business closes down, so everybody loses their jobs, or there's not enough work coming in, so some people lose their jobs. Or the third situation is maybe there's a restructure. You just organize things in a better way, it's more efficient, so you have less people to do the same work. We're currently in situation number two, or number one. So that means business closing down or not enough work coming in.
I think all three will be relevant in this time because, as we said, people are already thinking about the longer term, and restructure may very well be a decision that organizations have to make. So, yeah, really relevant. And I think the exact wording was, when should an organization consider redundancies?
Let me give you a quick tour through it, literally about a minute, and that will kind of help you. I did a talk on it just Tuesday, in fact, gone. So the government keep using the word layoff. The scheme is as an alternative for layoff, but it's actually this redundancy. Layoff's a temporary form of redundancy anyway. So redundancy means there's no longer a type of, the job is not required anymore in the three scenarios I've said. Then there would normally be a process that you follow. The process would normally be a consultation period. That means talking to the employees about why there's no work there, why they're selected, all that sort of stuff. That consultation period, the length of it depends on how many employees are being made redundant. If it's 20 or more, there's a minimum 30-day consultation period. If it's 100 or more, there's a minimum 45-day consultation period. And if it's less than 20, it's just whatever's reasonable in the circumstances. Is a very short thing I'm going to give you. So first of all, you need meaningful consultation. Second, you need a fair, selective, and objective selection criteria. Why are you being selected for redundancy? That needs to be applied correctly. You then need to look at suitable alternative employment. And then redundancy needs to be the last reasonable resort. That's the normal process. Now with the furloughing scheme, I would suggest that if an employee is eligible to be furloughed, then that is what should be explored before you make them redundant, because otherwise redundancy won't be the last reasonable resort. Yeah. But most importantly is it only applies to employees with 2 years service or more. They're not entitled to redundancy pay, and they're not entitled to that redundancy process that I've just talked to you about. So anybody with less than 2 years employment service, and employers have a lot more choices about whether they want to furlough them or not furlough them or make them redundant and so forth.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's really helpful. Thank you, Tosh. I've got a couple of questions, but what I would say before I go on to these questions is actually the time to consider when is when, you know, it's about what access you have to the furloughing is really key. That will give you longevity and how long you can keep people furloughed. And at the moment, the furlough support, the grant is only to the end of May. But it feels like time is flying, and it could be that the government extend that. We don't know, but they do.
Two types of scenarios that I'm going to foresee for when you should be looking at redundancies. You can look at them right now if you want to for employees with less than 2 years service. Or you'll have to revisit the situation if the furlough scheme, I can't even say it anymore, the furlough scheme, if that is no longer eligible, well, then employers aren't going to have a lot of choice, are they?
Exactly. And it really
so it will be at the end of the eligibility, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Sorry. Can you say that again? I'm getting a bit of a delay, Tosh. I don't know if anyone out there is as well.
Yeah, sorry, you're a little bit choppy, Meeta. I don't know quite why this time, but so basically what I was saying was the two scenarios are either if the employee's got less than 2 years service, you can make them redundant straight away. They won't be entitled to redundancy pay, just their notice pay and holiday pay. If it's more than 2 years service, well, I suppose you'd wait until the furlough scheme is no longer in existence. because otherwise it wouldn't be the last reasonable resort to make them redundant.
So this is going to unfold, and over time it will become clearer as to when redundancy is the right decision. Thank you, Tosh. Right, I'm going to go over to some questions here. One of these questions was around, does putting people on furlough null and void the notice period of employees?
From the top, Meeta.
I'm actually
from the top. I'm sorry,
I'm going back over some of the questions that came up earlier.
I'll stop talking. You ask the question. Say again.
So Olivia asked the question: does putting people on furlough null and void the notice period?
Tell me the person who's asking the question and the question.
And should you make these people redundant at the end of the furlough?
We did it again. So I missed the beginning of that question. I'm sorry, Meeta. Say it one more time.
Okay. Sorry, everyone. We don't know why, but this is the fun of working from home. Let's try that. Third time lucky. Does putting people on furlough null and void the notice period of employees? And should you make them redundant at the end of the furlough?
Okay, so the question isn't quite a right question, because why are they on notice? If they're put on notice not because of anything to do with the coronavirus or some other circumstances, well, then there's no reason to put them on a furlough.
Yeah.
If it is part of a redundancy process, well, then there's nothing wrong with retracting that redundancy. Absolutely, because the furlough scheme is there in place to avoid a redundancy.
Okay.
So it shouldn't null and void the notice period unless it's a redundancy situation, is what I'm saying.
All right, thank you. So we have a question from Isabel. If an employee pay is reduced with consent and then at a later date they are made redundant, would their pay be calculated at the salary prior to reduction or the newly agreed reduced salary?
That's a good question. I mean, strictly speaking, it's what that person's normal salary is. I'm going to suggest it's the full pay, because this is a temporary leave of absence. This is a slot that we're just changing the terms because of the circumstances. If at the end we're looking at redundancies, I'm going to suggest it will probably be on the basis of their normal full pay. I can't give you a definitive answer yet because we've never dealt with anything like this before. But I'm going to say that I think this is almost like you look at this as an exception to the circumstances. It's not normal. It isn't what their normal pay is. It's a furlough period.
Yeah. So redundancy, we think, will be on the normal salary rate, but we'll come back with more clarity on that.
Yeah. Correct.
Okay. Tosh, I'm getting some feedback that we are quite delayed in our webinar today, and I apologize for all the technical difficulties, everyone. I think the whole of the UK is struggling with bandwidth at the moment. What I would say at this time is that we will go back through all of the questions and do a Q&A session, maybe when the bandwidth is less busy. Maybe on a Sunday morning worked out quite well last time for us. If you do have any more questions, please keep posting them on here. Tosh, is there anything else you'd like to do before we tie things up today, or say?
I know it's delayed. I know it's delayed, Meeta, and it's annoying. But why don't we still try 2 or 3 more questions? We said we'd do it for like 30, 40 minutes.
All right.
If we can cover 2 or 3 more questions, then we can wrap this up, and we'll do a follow-up video answering everybody's questions anyway.
All right.
And then hopefully next time we can get it a bit cleaner. But I think it might be useful. They're here now. Let's see who else we can help. Let's
try then, but apologies if it is a bit delayed. I've got a good question here from Andy. He's coming from an employee perspective, so that's quite good for us to look at the other side. He says, I was placed on unpaid leave 2 weeks ago. After 4 weeks, I have been told I can apply for I've been told that I can apply for redundancy after 4 weeks. My employer wants to furlough me, however, due to my personal circumstances, I would prefer to be made redundant. Is that possible to refuse furlough and still get made redundant?
Yes. Furloughing has to be by agreement.
Okay. There we go. Got a good answer there. Right, let's have a look. So we've covered off the additional job question. And we've also covered off, can we just confirm, remind me what you said about notice periods. Notice periods remain in redundancy, that's right. Is it?
I think the question before was, does it nullify the notice period if somebody is furloughed during their notice period? So what I said was, it depends on what the reason that notice was given in the first place. If it was because of a redundancy, well, then it can nullify it because they no longer need to be made redundant. And the government schemes is there in place to put the furlough scheme in place to stop the redundancy. If they're being put on notice for something else they've somebody's resigned or they've been dismissed for gross misconduct or anything else like that, it's not relevant.
Fine. And taking that forward a bit, if somebody were to be made redundant after the furlough scheme support ends, would a notice period be put in place then?
So they've got to be put on. They've got to be on the payroll from the 28th of February. If they're making them redundant and they've got less than 2 years service, then that's no issue at all. They're not entitled to redundancy pay, and you'll give them notice of redundancy if you want to do that. Fine. If they've got more than 2 years service, I'm saying that because they are employees with more than 2 years have the right not to be unfairly dismissed. It seems to me that furloughing is a reasonable step before you would consider making somebody redundant. Fine.
And if you do make them redundant after the furlough period, would a notice period apply?
Yes.
Fine.
We still have to give them redundancy. We still have to follow the same rules that would normally apply in any other situation like that. Employment rules would still apply.
Thank you, Tosh. Okay, apparently we are clearer now, so that's positive. So I'm going to ask another question here around reduced hours. So if you, Olivia asks, if you are on reduced hours and pay with consent due to coronavirus, would maternity pay be calculated at the salary prior to reduction? Good question.
So the right to maternity leave is returned on the same terms and conditions. Obviously, that's not happening now. So what will have to happen is a couple of things. They'll have to come back and they'll have to be furloughed, just like anybody else, because they're coming back to their job. What's going to be different in the current circuit? Normally what happens is there's some flexible working request that's made because people want to have reduced time to look after children and so forth. That obviously won't be happening now. So long and short of it is, if they come back, they will be furloughed like everybody else.
What about somebody?
But they should be.
What about somebody who's going off on maternity and they're trying to establish what they will be paid whilst they're off because of the 80% furlough scheme? I mean, obviously these are early days, but over time, what would the maternity pay be calculated on? Would it be paid on the original salary or the furloughed salary?
So actually, salary for maternity pay purposes is calculated on a period of time, up to about 13 weeks of what the normal salary is. So it's going to be arguable, isn't it? Because it's not normal salary. So I think there will be cases that will come out about that. I'm going to suggest that it's still on the original pay, just like I was discussing about redundancy pay calculations, because this is not normal. But I'm sure that will depend on how long it goes on for something to become something abnormal to become normal, I suppose, over a period of time. Yeah, so the answer to the question is, I think you calculate on what their normal pay would be.
Okay.
That's what I would be advising.
Thank you, Tosh. Right, let's have a little look through some of these questions, and I think we're going to keep going just for a couple more minutes. Really good question, actually. Can you announce who has been furloughed, or is it confidential? I mean, I think people are going to find out by just the nature of who is or isn't doing the normal stuff. But what should a company do?
There's no rules about it. It doesn't have to be confidential. You can make a public announcement of who's furloughed or not furloughed. I think it's a case-by-case basis, and whatever suits you in the circumstances.
Yeah.
What you don't want to do is start to create mistrust. If you start saying, you know what, I'll make you furloughed, but I won't tell him, it just starts to cause issues. Why do that?
I'd like to share that for us, what we've tried to do is to be as transparent whilst being respectful of everyone's private situation. But I think you're right. I think as much clarity and how much communication is out there, if everyone understands, everyone knows why we're doing this, everyone knows what's going on out there, the more clarity and guidance and clear information we can give, the more trust and confidence that builds back into the working community. And that will only give back to the organization in this time. So I think clear communication, and as much as possible, try to what can be shared amongst everyone, try to do that in one time. Have a group chat or do a group email and then have chats with individuals. That way everyone feels equally valued, and I think that is so important in this time.
Meeta, I know we're coming to the end and we should wrap it up now. I thought we'd try and answer one more question. I know we covered it in the talk, but I think that might be what the number one question is that most people who have attended this webinar have. And it's from Sahni, and it says, we want to hear about practice steps for furlough. So we did cover that, but I thought I'd just do a very quick step-by-step process again. So you agree it with your staff. You get them to sign an agreement that agreement has to confirm that during the furlough period, they will only be paid 80% of their wage costs, which includes national insurance contribution and pensions. If it doesn't say that, then they're still eligible to receive their full pay. So you'll be topping up the 20%, even though you don't have any obligation to. To be honest, a lot of companies are just paying the full salary and then claiming back 80% of whatever they can claim back, capped obviously at 2,500. That's it for now. You put them on the furlough in those steps. Keep them informed. The ones that aren't obviously being furloughed, they will need to know what they're still required to do, and they'll be paid in the normal way if they're working from home. As soon as we get the portal, HMRC portal up and running at the end of this month, well, then we'll know the details of exactly how and what and who and we claim and when we get paid. Everything else is guesstimates.
Yeah. And hopefully by next week, we'll have even more certainty around that, and we can share that with everyone who attends the Q&A next week at the same time of 1 p.m. on Friday.
So that's really it for now. I hope it was really useful to people. I appreciate the questions going forever. Meeta and I will do what we did last time, which is we will literally go through all of those questions, doing a follow-up video and send this out to you as well. So everything has been addressed. So if you're specifically looking for an answer to something that has been asked here that we didn't get to, or if you've got any other questions, look, I said to us, we're nice, friendly people. Please call us. We'll either help you or we'll put you in touch with the right people. Yeah. I keep using this phrase, we're all having a crisis within a crisis, but it doesn't have to be like that. We can just help each other in whatever ways that we can, okay?
Yeah. And it's really key that we all support each other and also our teams on the ground. The more information that we can give, the more clarity we can give, the more everyone feels supported. And that will reflect back into the mental well-being of everyone going forward. And we want to help everyone get through this crisis. Most importantly, everyone, please stay safe. And we look forward to seeing you at our next Q&A session next week. Thank you so much.
Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Meeta. Bye-bye.